Hi folks, you're with Tassus today at your Pushback channel, and please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue, or two issues really, mass repatriation of illegal aliens in the West. I mean, just in the United States alone, there's somewhere in the order of 30 million of them illegals. But also mass repatriation of people who've arrived legally in the West under very, very lax immigration systems, again, globalist sponsored. People who have no intention of integrating, they don't want to integrate. In fact, they would refuse any attempts to integrate, and where they're just in the West for the free stuff. And just as importantly, and they've created these subculture ghettos where they're now in such large numbers, they've effectively created, they're balkanizing the West already. There are vast areas of Sydney, for example, where you'll be lucky to see anyone who's not from the Indian subcontinent or anyone who's not from China. And these people are, they've created mini states within the state, and they're demanding special handouts, representation, their own special politicians, their own special everything. So they're not integrating into Australian society at all, far from it. And they're able to create ghettos with astonishing speed. I've noticed this recently in my area. There are a bunch of houses came up for sale, and Indian investors came in and bought the whole lot. So you've now got areas of just, well, I won't say areas, 4 or 5 houses together, where all Indians have moved in. And it happens almost overnight. I was looking at another thing where just a strip of three new houses have been built in the one street. These are older houses that are pulled down and new houses put on. I've noticed that they're all Indian. That the investors were there, and the moneyed people, the rich Brahmins and so on, and they own those 3 houses, so they can create ghettos with astonishing speed. And they seem to be able to, build properties that are not permitted under local property planning law, and yet these people strangely seem to have no problem with getting it done. It seems to happen very, very quickly for them. But I've noticed just in stuff we've tried to do, we have to jump through a lot of hoops to get even a base, an extension to a carport, and we've got to jump through endless hoops to get that done. Yet these people can break, goodness knows how many planning laws and environmental laws, and somehow they get away with it. I don't know. It just seems odd to me. But then coming back to the issue of mass repatriation and repatriation, this is not just illegals necessarily, but people who've come under, again, the very low bar they've had to meet to become migrants to the West, and also where they've got these, again, very low bar pathways to become permanent residents or citizens and so on. So I'm in just to give an example, I'm in a taxi going, I had to go interstate to do a couple of things. And so I was in a taxi going from the airport into the CBD. And this gentleman from the subcontinent was there, who seems like a nice enough guy, by the way. And he's telling me how he got to, well, I'm prompting him with some questions, but he's telling me how he got to Australia. And I think I can't remember if it's from India or Pakistan, but anyway, the Indian subcontinent. And he bribed a immigration official. I mean, we're talking incredibly corrupt countries. You can't take a shit without having to bribe somebody in these places. So he bribes a immigration official to falsely claim that he's also bribed the guy at the local university to give him a degree that he doesn't have. And then he's going to come to Australia to do further studies. And his studies are to be a taxi driver. That's all he does. And he brazenly admits that he's not qualified in anything, and that he's doing some bullshit dishwashing course here that supposedly qualifies him as a student. And again, that involves yet more bribes. So, and the bribing can be fairly cheap. Some of these people their monthly salary is like $200. in the subcontinent. So if he swings, and he comes from a family who's got a bit of money, if he throws a couple of $100 at someone, then they'll do whatever he wants. You want a false fake university degree, done. You want fake immigration papers, bingo. Done. And this so for less than $500, he can bribe everyone he needs to get to Australia. So that's how incredibly lax the system is. Anyway, so he's here in Australia, and he's been in Australia for, 12 months or so. And he keeps hopping from dishwashing course to dishwashing course. Somehow this all gets signed off on. No one's worked out that the whole thing's an outrageous scam. And so he's telling me that how he's going to bring out, his future bride, and they're going to get married and so on, and from the village of his ancestors. And then he's going to, once he gets a child born here, then that'll kind of guarantee. So it's an anchor baby. He's got it all planned out. And then he's going to bring out all his aunts, uncles, cousins, and brothers and sisters. The whole fucking village is going to come out. And again, remember, these are societies where they accept cousin marriage. So a second, third, fourth, fifth cousin is family as far as they're concerned. So his wider family is like 1 million people. And his aim, his objective, his goal is to bring them all out to the first world country. Now, again, prompted by my questions, he falls back onto what I think is the United Nations talking points. I am only coming for a better life. I just want a better life. What is wrong with that? I just want a better life. So no. You're not coming for a better life. You're coming to get all the freebies and the handouts and scam the system and bribe the fuck out of anyone you can lay your hands on. That's what you're doing. Don't give me this better life crap. So I then sort of turned the conversation, I pivoted in the other direction. So would you come to Australia or any rich white Western country? Would you come to Australia if you were unable to bring out your bride from Pakistan? And the guy looked at me. I remember I'm in the back seat and he's in the front seat. He actually turned around to look at me as if I'd gone temporarily insane. Of course I wouldn't come. No, hey, I have to transplant my total cultural life to Australia. And only because I can do that will I come to Australia or another first world country. So if he wasn't allowed to bring out the childhood betrothed, they're betrothed at 2 years old or some shit over there. So if he wasn't allowed to bring out the bride, if he wasn't allowed to bring out any relatives, then he just plain wouldn't come. And now, bear in mind, he wouldn't have got to Australia anyway, unless he was bribing the crap out of everybody. So that's to be considered. And there needs to be oversight on that. People that come from these really corrupt countries have had to bribe several people to get here. And that needs to really be examined. And this is this low bar. Now, he's in Australia legally. There's nothing illegal about the bribery is illegal, of course, but in terms of the process he went through and the forms he filled out, all this sort of stuff, he's in Australia under false pretenses here, but he's gone through the legal pathway, and he's one of gazillions. And but he's quite clear. If I couldn't get the handouts and the freebies, if I couldn't bring out my bride, if I can't bring out my relatives, of course I wouldn't come. So well, why didn't you go to a richer Islamic country? Oh no, not the same thing. Like, why didn't you go to, I don't know, fucking Saudi Arabia or Iran or somewhere? Why didn't you go to another country where now he speaks Farsi, as I understand, or at least as I recall him saying. So that's quite widely spoken in the Arabic Islamic world. So he could have gone to another country where he speaks the language, they've got the same religion, many of the same customs and habits. But no, I want to go to the totally alien, completely alien rich white West because of all the freebies and handouts and how I can scam you and bribe you. And then he starts to tell me how just if he gets residency in Iran or a work permit or something like that, or another Islamic country, there's no way he can bring out his whole family there. They just won't have any of that. You're there to work, and the idea that you can import 1 million people into no, not going to happen. So he only comes to the West because it's a soft touch. Now he's typical of gazillions people from the subcontinent. And the big sources of immigration to the West, of course, or to Australia particularly, but also Britain and so on, are India. There are hundreds upon hundreds of millions of people in India who are gagging to get the fuck out of India. But they're unwilling in any sense to integrate into Western society, and think it's something of an outrage if they're expected to do that. So straight away, as soon as you say, well, social integration has to be a basic requirement of you coming to the West, then straight away Indians, Pakistanis, those sort of people will they'll self-deport, or they'll simply not apply. Now they'll be screaming, "It is racist and Nazi! It is Hitler! Hitler again!" They'll carry on like that. But the reality is, if you insist on integration, and you could even do low level sort of integration, saying, "Well, look, you have to speak English," which a lot of Indians do, and even the more upper class Pakistanis do. You have to speak English. You have to have a qualification in Australia. So you can't come from some corrupt bullshit place in India and say, "No, I've got a PhD." You have to actually pass a very impartial, rigorous exam in Australia to be able to get, if indeed you're claiming to have that qualification. And you cannot bring out a bride, and you cannot bring out any relatives when you get residency or citizenship. You just plain can't do it. Now, this would mean that the majority, the vast majority of Indians and subcontinent people, or indeed Chinese people, would say, "Nah, I'm not interested. If that's what that's what you expect of me, then I'm not interested. I'm just here for the free stuff. I'm just here because I can go into a suburb where there is only other Indians. I can go to businesses that are owned by the whole. It's a little India, and only because I can go to that, and I can bring out the bride and the relatives. That is the only reason why I'll come to your country." So if you create a circumstances where social integration is one of the priorities that you have to meet, then that will radically and drastically change the amount of people, illegal or otherwise, particularly legal, given the legal side is huge. Australia shut down reasonably successfully the boats, if you like, coming to Australia with the illegals. They shut that down with some success. But then almost immediately, they just ramped up the legal migration and lowered the bar for the standard of migrant they're getting. So illiterate peasants started to pour in, but this time it was legal instead of coming illegally on the boats. So nothing was in the overall sort of sense of adding social value. So nothing really changed. In fact, if anything, it was worse. So that's so social integration is there. Now I want to talk about social integration, what constitutes social integration. So let's suppose that there's going to be mass repatriation of not just illegals, but people who aren't integrating. What would be the definition of, who would fall on which side of the line? What's the definition of not integrating? Now, again, the favorite line that the subcontinent people, India and Pakistan, favorite line they give: "I am only coming for a better life. What is wrong with that? Why are you denying me a better life, you fucking Nazi?" But it's a little bit different. Again, when the Indians or subcontinent people generally come here, they're being gifted jobs in the public service through affirmative action, or the big multinational firms that are being heavily leaned on by the globalist cabal to employ these people, again under affirmative action, diversity, equity, inclusion, ESG, all that sort of stuff. These people are being gifted jobs that otherwise would not have a hope of getting, not even the slightest hope. And again, I was hiring a lot of people when the mass migration thing just began, and there was very few Indians, or the Chinese spoke very bad English, so I hardly employed any of them. But the Indians that did speak, some of the upper class Brahmin type Indians and so on that spoke English, they were still as corrupt as fuck. Their PhDs were still acquired corruptly. They still didn't see why they should do a skerrick of work, and thought it's something of an outrage that they should be expected to do any work when their social status alone should have been enough to guarantee them prestigious and well-paid employment. So these people didn't come. They're only here for the freebies. They're not here to do the work. They're not here to contribute. Now, I'm sure you can find exceptions, by the way, but they're not here to do work and contribute to society or share or give. They're here to take. That's all they're here for. And they think they're entitled to do it. You know, the Indian nationalist press, media, constantly harps on about how India was this incredibly rich country with milk and honey just running down every river. You know, the river Ganges was just simply milk and honey, bulk milk and honey. And only when evil Whitey came along and suddenly all the wealth was gone. And that's the only reason why white countries are rich, because they stole it all from India. I mean, you know, insane, delusional propaganda bullshit like that is something that the Indian nationalist media push very strongly. A lot of the Indians in Australia too believe that crap. So coming back to do Indians come to Australia to integrate, or Chinese for that matter, or hardly anybody? You know, the Filipinos have a decent rate of integration. It's not high, but it's better than a lot of the others. So, and again, even the Filipino thing, they only want to latch onto a rich white guy. They're not actually interested in, and they still pester the white guy. Well, can you bring out all my relatives and sponsor them and this sort of stuff? So even that still happens. Now, the Indians, though, or the subcontinent people more generally, people from the Middle East as well, come to think of it, they don't come to Australia. They only want they come to bring out their bride. Even third or fourth generation Western born, they still sending back to the village of their ancestors for husbands and brides. And these people will never integrate, don't want to integrate, don't see why they should integrate. So should these people be repatriated? Now they say, well, you know, we're here, we want a better life, we're here, and you know, I've got a job, and you know, I work for the Australian Public Service. My kids go to the local you know, high school or whatever. I'm as Australian as anybody else. Well, hold on, stop. Let's just have a look at this. Firstly, you live in an Indian-only neighbourhood. Your friends you have Indian-only friends. You'll accept white friends provided they're giving you stuff, but otherwise you won't really have white friends at all. So you're only hanging out with Indian friends. Your children only have Indian friends at school. There's a little Indian cabal, and they only hang out with their Indian buddies. You either work for an Indian business, which employs only Indians, or you parasite off the Australian taxpayer because you're given an affirmative action, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion job in the public service that you otherwise wouldn't have a hope of getting, and so on. So exactly how integrated are you? You already want the you know, your children that are just born. You've already planned the marriage that they're going to have to some man or woman or some child in India. You know, your planned arranged marriages are already taking place there. Your 20-year-old daughter that wants to you know, marry some local Indian guy, even that's beyond the pale, and you're threatening to disinherit her if she does it, and so on. So how integrated are you in Australian society? You're not integrated at all. You're running a little India or a little Pakistan in the middle of Australia. That sort of non-integration is leading to balkanization. It's already, the signs are there. So should those people be repatriated as well? Or should all new immigrants be required to meet that standard of integration? And this is a conversation we need to have. We need to have it urgently. Otherwise, balkanization, which is already starting now, is going to only get worse, and it's going to become rather unpleasant very quickly. You've been a Tassos today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.